Alexis is one of the greatest unearned blessings of my life. She has transformed me, helped me to ground and center my inner life, and discover the joys of building a nurturing home with someone you.
For decades, he was the untouchable Bachelor of the Senate, a man who seemed destined to walk the halls of power alone. He was the politician who famously claimed he was married to Newark, the workaholic who lived in a housing project to prove a point, and the subject of endless swirling rumors about why a handsome, successful man in his 50s just couldn't, or wouldn't, settle down. But then, in a blink-and-you-missed-it moment that has left Washington reeling, everything changed. Cory Booker didn't just get married, he got married twice, in 1 week, to a woman 18 years his junior, who nobody saw coming. This isn't just a wedding announcement. It is a complete rewriting of a political narrative that has stood for 30 years. The 56-year-old senator and his 38-year-old bride, Alexis Lewis, have executed one of the most sudden and secretive pivots in modern political history. From a quiet engagement in September to a double ceremony in November, the speed of this union has triggered a tidal wave of questions. Is this the frantic dash of a man hearing the ticking of a biological clock? Is it the final piece of the puzzle for a 2028 presidential run? Or is it something far more personal, a man finally breaking under the crushing loneliness of public service? Today, we are tearing down the curtain on the wedding that shocked the establishment, exposing the timeline, the rumors, the biological ultimatum, and the calculated secrecy behind Cory Booker's sudden sprint to the altar. To understand the magnitude of this shock, you have to understand the history. For years, Cory Booker was an anomaly. In Washington, D.C., a city built on optics, the political wife is as essential as the donor list. She is the prop, the partner, the softener of sharp edges. But Booker refused to play the game. He spent his 30s and 40s dodging the question. When he ran for president in 2020, the chatter wasn't just about his policies. It was about his empty ring finger. Focus groups whispered about it. Pundits analyzed it. Late-night hosts cracked jokes about it. There was a palpable distrust from the American public. A sense that a man without a family didn't have a stake in the future. And then there were the rumors. You know the ones. The internet has spent the better part of 15 years dissecting Booker's sexuality. It became an open secret in the gossip columns. The theory that his bachelorhood was a cover, that he was hiding his true self to survive in a political landscape that wasn't ready for a gay president. Booker has addressed these rumors before, laughing them off, challenging the media's obsession with who he sleeps with. But the whispers never truly died. They just went dormant. This sudden marriage to a significantly younger woman has, for some, silenced the critics. But for others, the cynics and the conspiracy theorists, it has only added fuel to the fire. They look at the speed, the age gap, and the timing, and they don't see romance. They see a strategy. They see a man cleaning up his biography before the next election cycle. But to get to the bride, we have to talk about the woman who almost took the title, Rosario Dawson. We cannot tell the story of Alexis Lewis without looking at the ghost of relationships past. When Booker and the Hollywood A-lister started dating in 2019, it felt like a fever dream. It was the collision of two different worlds, the glitz of the red carpet meeting the grit of the Senate floor. For 2 years, they were the it couple. She moved into his Newark home. They did FaceTime calls while he was on the campaign trail. It looked, for a fleeting moment, like Booker had found his match in someone who could handle the spotlight because she was already born in it. But then, it crumbled. The breakup in 2022 was quiet, but the implications were loud. Reports cited the distance, the conflicting schedules, the sheer impossibility of two superstars trying to share one orbit. It reinforced the narrative that Booker was unmarriageable, that his ambition left no room for a co-pilot. The failure of the Dawson relationship seemed to prove that Booker needed someone else, not a star, but a supporter, not a headline grabber, but a home builder. He didn't need a red carpet partner. He needed a ground wire. And that is exactly who he found, but he had to look outside the spotlight to find her. Enter Alexis Lewis. She is the mystery variable in this equation. At 38 years old, she is a generation removed from the senator. She isn't an actress. She isn't a lobbyist. She isn't a fellow politician clawing for airtime. She is a professional, a director at a real estate investment firm, a woman who deals in concrete assets and hard numbers, not polling data and press releases. She is, by all accounts, a civilian. And for a man like Booker, who has lived his entire adult life on a stage, that normalcy must have looked like a life raft. But their meeting wasn't some fairy tale encounter. In fact, it almost didn't happen. The story of their first date is telling because it reveals just how jaded Booker had become. When a mutual friend suggested the setup, Booker's initial answer was a hard no. He looked at the logistics. He was splitting time between Newark and DC, she was living in Los Angeles, and he saw a logistical nightmare. He saw a repeat of the Rosario-Dawson struggle. He didn't want another cross-country romance that lived and died on airline schedules. It took aggressive convincing from their friend to get him to agree to a single meeting. And then, Booker did something that peels back the layer of cool he tries to project. He admitted, with surprising candor, to being paranoid. Before he ever shook her hand, before he ever looked her in the eye, he digitally stalked her. In a recent interview, he laughed while admitting, "I did not employ the FBI, but I got everything I could get on her off the internet." He wanted to know the risks. He wanted to know who she was. He was vetting her like a running mate before he even dated her. Contrast that with Alexis. She reportedly didn't Google him at all. She walked into that date blind, treating him like a human being rather than a legislative agenda. That power dynamic, the guarded, calculating senator and the open, unguarded woman, set the stage for everything that followed. The relationship that blossomed from that reluctant first date was kept under absolute lockdown. For a year and a half, they operated in the shadows. In a world where everyone has a camera phone and privacy is a myth, they managed to date, travel, and fall in love without a single headline. This was intentional. This was Booker learning from the circus of his past relationships. They built a foundation in the dark so that it wouldn't crack when they finally turned on the lights. It wasn't until a soft launch in an interview, where he casually mentioned being in a relationship without naming her, that the public even knew he was off the market. Then came the engagement in September 2025, and the language Booker used changed. It wasn't just romantic, it was almost religious. He started describing Alexis not just as a partner, but as a savior. He called her an unearned blessing. He spoke about how she transformed him, how she helped him ground and center his inner life. This is the language of a man who is drowning. It paints a picture of the deep, isolating loneliness that often plagues high-level politicians. Behind the megawatt smile and the energetic speeches, Booker was a man coming home to an empty house in a dangerous city, night after night. Alexis didn't just bring love, she brought structure. She brought the concept of home to a man who had only known housing. But why the rush? Why go from an engagement announcement in September to a wedding in November? That is a timeline of mere weeks. In the world of high society weddings, that is barely enough time to print the invitations, let alone plan the event. The answer came from Booker himself, in a podcast appearance that slipped under the radar for many but contains the key to this entire mystery. In October 2025, just 1 month before the wedding, Booker dropped the facade of the casual groom. He spoke with an intensity that was almost jarring. "Time is of the essence," he said. He explicitly stated, "We're going to do it before the end of the year. Quick." And then he dropped the bombshell. "We're both hoping to have kids at some point sometime soon." There it is. The biological ultimatum. At 56 years old, Cory Booker is confronting his own mortality. He is looking at the math. If they have a child next year, he will be 75 when that child graduates high school. He knows that the window is closing, not just slightly, but slamming shut. This wasn't a shotgun wedding in the traditional sense, but it was a wedding held at gunpoint by Father Time. The urgency wasn't about the election, it was about the legacy of a family line. He wants to be a father, and he realized he couldn't wait another year for the optics to be perfect. He had to move now, and move they did. The wedding, or rather, the weddings, were a masterclass in political symbolism and personal necessity. The first ceremony, held on Monday, November 24th, was a secret. It took place in Newark, the city that Booker built his identity around. But it wasn't a grand cathedral affair with thousands of onlookers. It was at the U.S. District Court. It was small, gritty, and intimate. By marrying in Newark first, Booker paid his debts. He signaled to his base, to the people who voted him into office, that he was still one of them. He brought his bride to the place that defined him, making her part of the Newark narrative. It was a nod to his past. But 5 days later, on Saturday, November 29th, the scene shifted dramatically. The couple traveled to Washington, D.C., Alexis's hometown, for the real celebration. This was the wedding for the families, for the joy, for the future. By holding 2 ceremonies in less than a week, they bridged the gap between his life and hers. Newark was for Cory the politician, D.C. was for Alexis the wife. It was a logistical tightrope walk, pulling off 2 secret events in 2 of the busiest cities on the East Coast without a single leak, until they were ready to announce it themselves. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, the age gap. 18 years. When Cory Booker was graduating from Stanford and starting his Rhodes Scholarship, Alexis Lewis was in elementary school. When he was becoming the mayor of Newark and saving people from burning buildings, she was just starting her career. This generational divide is significant. It changes the power dynamic of the marriage. It feeds into the skepticism that this is a trophy situation, a powerful older man securing a younger, vibrant partner to keep him young and improve his image. However, those close to the couple argue the opposite. They say that Booker, despite his age, has a youthful, almost boyish energy that matches Lewis perfectly. They argue that her career in the high-stakes world of real estate finance proves she is no pushover, that she is an equal intellect who just happens to be younger. But the optics remain undeniable. In the visual language of American politics, an older senator with a young, attractive wife and a potential baby on the way is a powerful archetype. It screams vitality. It screams future. It counters the narrative of an aging, out-of-touch politician. Which brings us to the 2028 theory. You cannot separate a United States senator's personal life from his ambition. It is naive to think otherwise. Cory Booker has never been shy about his desire to be president. He ran in 2020 and failed to gain traction, partly because voters couldn't figure him out. He seemed too curated, too rehearsed, and yes, too single. In American history, we have only elected one lifelong bachelor as president, James Buchanan, and that was in the 1850s. The electorate subconsciously distrusts a man who walks alone. They want the first family. They want the tableau of the husband, the wife, and the children waving from the stage. By marrying Alexis Lewis now, in late 2025, Booker is setting the stage perfectly for the next cycle. If they have a child in 2026, by the time the 2028 primaries heat up, you will be the doting father of a toddler. He will be able to talk about fighting for my child's future with genuine emotion. He will have the softizing presence of Alexis by his side at rallies, shaking hands, doing the spouse interviews, humanizing him in a way he could never do alone. This marriage fixes the biggest hole in his political resume. It transforms him from the lonely warrior into the family man. But is that cynical? Maybe. Or maybe it's just the reality of life at this level. It is entirely possible that 2 things are true at once, that Cory Booker genuinely loves Alexis Lewis and was desperate to find a partner, and that he knows this marriage unlocks a political door that was previously bolted shut. The timing is too perfect to be accidental, but the emotion seems too raw to be fake. The transformation of Cory Booker is now complete. The man who once said, "I found a lot of my guys who are married to their jobs, that's how I feel," has eaten his words. He has traded the solitary confinement of his own ambition for the messy, complicated, public joy of marriage. He has pivoted from the man who saves the world alone to the man who builds a world with someone else. As the dust settles on this bombshell week, the speculation will only grow. Washington is watching Alexis Lewis. They are analyzing her style, her speech, her background, trying to see if she has the First Lady gene. They are watching Booker's polls to see if the marriage bump is real. And they are watching the calendar, counting the months to see if a pregnancy announcement follows the wedding with the same breathless speed. Cory Booker has surprised us all. He kept the biggest secret of his life while living in the most public glass house imaginable. He beat the rumors, he beat the clock, and he might have just beaten the odds for his political future. The Bachelor of the Senate is dead. Long live the groom. But the question remains, is this the happy ending of a love story, or the opening chapter of a campaign strategy? Only time, and perhaps the 2028 ballot, will tell.